Richard Trenton Chase was born on May 23, 1950, in Sacramento, California. On the surface, his early life didn't scream future monster. He was a cute kid, popular at school, a Cub Scout, and even played Little League Baseball. Teachers liked him, and his birthday parties were packed with friends. But behind the scenes, things were messy. His parents, Richard Sr. and Beatrice, fought constantly. Richard Sr. was a strict computer specialist with a temper, sometimes physically disciplining young Richard, while Beatrice, a teacher, had her own mental health struggles. Their marriage was a war zone, and little Richard was caught in the crossfire. By age 10, Richard was already showing red flags that would make any parent nervous today. He was torturing and killing animals, cats, dogs, even rabbits, sometimes drinking their blood. He was also setting fires and wetting the bed long past the age most kids stop. These behaviors, later called the McDonald Triad, are often linked to future violence. But back in the 1950s, people didn't know much about that. His parents, they didn't do much. They took him to a psychiatrist a couple of times, but it was brushed off as he's just a weird kid. As Richard hit his teens, things got weirder. His parents split up, and the family bounced between Sacramento and Los Angeles. He tried to fit in at high school, keeping his clothes neat and even dating a couple of girls. But there was a problem. He couldn't perform sexually, which humiliated him. He started believing his body was failing him, that his blood was being stolen or his heart was stopping. He'd hold oranges on his head, thinking the vitamin C would soak into his brain, and even shaved his head once to watch his skull bones move. Yeah, the guy was spiraling. By his late teens, Richard was deep into drugs, LSD, marijuana, alcohol, you name it. He was a social outcast, barely holding down odd jobs like typing or working at a paint store. He'd get fired quickly, often for being too erratic. He moved in with roommates for a bit, but they kicked him out after finding him acting bizarre, like sitting on their lawn or talking to himself. His mental health was crumbling, and he was obsessed with the idea that he needed blood to survive. He'd kill animals, drink their blood, and even eat their organs, convinced it was keeping him alive. In 1973, a neurologist finally said, "This guy's got a major psychiatric problem." Richard was ranting about stolen pulmonary veins and UFOs zapping his blood with death rays. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but instead of getting real help, he was in and out of hospitals, living with his parents or his grandma in LA. His family didn't know how to handle him, and mental health care back then was a mess. They just let him go, hoping he'd snap out of it. Spoiler, he didn't. Fast forward to 1977, and Richard, now 27, was a walking disaster. He was living alone in a grimy Sacramento apartment, his mind a tangle of delusions. He believed he needed human blood now. Animals weren't cutting it. On December 29, 1977, he kicked off his killing spree with a drive-by shooting. Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer, was helping his wife carry groceries when Richard shot him in the chest from his car. Just like that, a random guy was dead, and Richard felt nothing. A month later, on January 23, 1978, Richard struck again, and this time it got gruesome. Teresa Woolen, 22 and pregnant, was taking out the trash when Richard knocked on her door. He developed a creepy habit of testing doors in neighborhoods. If they were unlocked, he took it as an invitation. Teresa's door was open, and she paid the price. Richard shot her 3 times, stabbed her with a butcher knife, and then, well, it's horrific. He raped her corpse, cut off her nipples, drank her blood, and smeared her organs on the walls. When her husband came home, he found the scene so nightmarish it haunted the cops who responded. Detective Wayne Irie later said Teresa's terrified expression stuck with him for years. 4 days later, on January 27th, Richard went all in. He walked into the home of Evelyn Myrath, 38, on Merriwood Drive. Evelyn was babysitting her 22-month-old nephew, David Ferreira, and her 6-year-old son, Jason, was there too. Her friend Dan Meredith was visiting. Richard shot Dan in the head at the door, then killed Evelyn and Jason. He mutilated Evelyn's body, drinking her blood and eating parts of her organs. Jason was shot but not mutilated. Little David, though, was gone. Richard took the toddler's body with him. The house was a blood-soaked slaughterhouse. A neighbor called the cops after a kid visiting the house raised the alarm, and police found handprints and shoe prints in the blood, linking it to Teresa's murder. The cops were closing in, thanks to a tip from Nancy Holder, an old schoolmate of Richard's. She'd run into him at a store, and he creeped her out, asking about an ex-boyfriend who'd died years ago. He was wearing an orange parka, matching the description of the killer. Nancy tipped off the police, who found Richard's .22 caliber gun registered and tracked him down. When they arrested him at his apartment, it was a house of horrors. His fridge had human brains and organs, his blender was caked with rotting flesh, and his utensils were stained with blood. They found in Meredith's wallet and, later, David Ferreira's mutilated body in a cardboard box in a vacant lot. Richard's trial started in January 1979 and was a media circus. He was charged with 6 counts of murder. His defense argued he was insane, driven by schizophrenia. But Richard didn't help his case. He admitted to the killings, saying he needed blood to stop UFOs from draining him. The jury wasn't buying it. After 5 months, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. In prison, even other inmates were so disgusted by him that they told him to kill himself. On December 26, 1980, Richard did just that, overdosing on pills he'd hoarded from his doctor. He was 30 years old. So, what's the deal with Richard Chase? Was he pure evil, or a sick guy who slipped through the cracks? His story is a gut punch because it's not just about a monster. It's about a kid who showed signs of trouble early, and nobody stepped in. His parents ignored the warning signs, the mental health system failed him, and society looked the other way until it was too late. 6 innocent people, Ambrose, Teresa, her unborn child, Dan, Evelyn, Jason, and David, paid the price for that failure. The vampire of Sacramento left a scar on the city and on true crime history. His case is still studied by the FBI for its sheer horror and is a textbook example of a disorganized serial killer, random, sloppy, and driven by delusion. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in movies, they're walking among us, hiding in plain sight, until their darkness spills out.